Hey gamers, it's Hater115. Welcome back to Drips and Drops, or whatever I decide to call this show from now on. Doesn't matter. What does matter is what we're going to be talking about today. Xeno Threat. Slowly worked on in the background for several years, with bits and bobs leaking out now and then. This event is finally approaching its full release. The first official dynamic event, CIG wants to impress by creating an event that puts together Star Citizen's strengths into a fun player experience. Of course, you've heard all that speculation and whatnot by now, but the concrete details are finally all out there. On today's episode of Drips and Drops, we'll be going over the event, what exists, what doesn't, and all the nitty-gritty that you might want to know. I'm going to warn you gamers, we're going to be going into spoilers today, obviously, as we're going to be talking about mission descriptions, NPC dialogue, and event transcriptions to give y'all an open door to what, as of today, which is Sunday, January 17th, is currently in the Evocati's hands. Our information comes from a mixture of data mining and Evocati sources. I have not personally participated in the tests myself. As with all information that comes from secondhand sources, do expect some info lost in the game of telephone that is the leaking game. So with that, we begin our deep dive into Xeno Threat. Xeno Threat is a 3-phase dynamic event where the entire server is called to push back the Xeno Threat attack originating from Pyro. We will go through each phase individually, as they all center around an activity that will be prompted for however long the phase is active. Phase 1. Announcement. Phase 1 isn't really a phase per se, it's more of an announcement of the entire event. This comlink message right here is how it all begins.
Attention, people of Stanton. A great injustice has been done to you. For decades, the spineless bureaucrats of your government have been selling you and your fellow citizens piece by piece to the alien scum outside our borders and to their corporate masters within. Their greed, only matched by the absolute disregard for the values that made humanity great in the first place. My brothers and sisters have watched them feed on the dying carcass of the Empire for long enough. With the passage of the Human Xi'an Trade Initiative, it's clear that the government is happy to sell the final parts of humanity into servitude. The time has come to send a message that we will not consume their lives anymore, that we are the ones in charge. Stanton will be the first step in a revolution to take back the soul of the Empire. You will be witnesses. We are Xeno Threat. Out.
While no Evocati has been able to confirm any actual events happening in Phase 1, there are subsumption entries for random Xeno Threat encounters across Stanton. While we'll discuss quote-unquote cut content towards the end portion, I think it's safe to assume that if we aren't placed immediately into Phase 2 on release, these random encounters will be what makes up the playable portion of Phase 1. I can confirm at this point, though, that there is no deep mission content like the following 2 phases that will make up this phase. After some time of the initial transmission, Rowena Dooley of Advocacy contacts all players to enlist into the CDF, as Xeno Threat lay waste to Stanton. It is now we move on to Phase 2, Resupply. The resupply phase begins with Dooley contacting enlisted CDF members, informing them that several supply ships have either been intercepted or destroyed. It is up to the players to go to one of 20 locations and collect cargo from destroyed starfarers across Stanton. There are 3 kinds of cargo: Zetaprolinite, Acryloplex, and Delothermex. One of these cargo pieces is just a standard piece of cargo, while the second piece is destructible. Hey gamers, this is Hater in Post here to correct a little bit of info, and to also go in depth on what I mean by destructible cargo. All of the resupply points are actually within flying distance of Jericho, rather than being scattered across Stanton. This is because the destructible cargo type is triggered by a ship going into quantum, meaning the only viable delivery method would be cruise flight. Sorry for not catching this in the initial recording. Let's get back into it. The third piece is timed, meaning you have to be quick to bring it back to Jericho. The cargo is meant to resupply a docked javelin which the UAE has been using across Stanton to whip XenoThreat's ass. Cargo is delivered by landing on the pads and simply selling it to the trading station on the port. During this event, XenoThreat can attack both the players grabbing the cargo and Port Jericho itself with an Idris surrounded by fighter crew. It is up to the players to ensure cargo makes it back to Jericho and make sure any NPC supply ships at these derelict sites are able to leave. But players will also be faced with the challenge of having Port Jericho itself attacked by the Idris we have mentioned earlier. This Idris attacks the javelin docked at Jericho, and if the javelin is forced to take too much damage, it will have to retreat from Jericho, ending in mission failure. The Idris, luckily, doesn't have to be destroyed, but instead needs to be stripped of its surrounding fighters. Once either the Idris is taken enough damage or the fighters have all been dispatched, the Idris will retreat. There is no way to kill the Idris as of right now, nor is it meant to be killed. It's supposed to retreat. For CIG wants to save all those delicious explosions for Phase 3.
Attention, Stanton. The time has come to strike at the corporate puppets. Stand aside and watch as we burn their temples to the ground. Anyone attempting to interfere with our crusade will be viewed as allies of the snakes and culture traitors of the UEE, and will be shown no mercy. Consider this your only warning.
Xeno Threat has made their move. We move on to Phase 3, Showdown. Xeno Threat has initiated a last-ditch effort to drive out the remaining UEE forces in Stanton by directly attacking Jericho with all of their forces. The goal of the players is to ensure not too many Navy or players are lost to death, or else the UEE will be forced to retreat and the mission will fail. The initial wave contains essentially the same forces dealt with earlier at Jericho, easy peasy, except now you must kill the Idris this time. After that happens, another 2 capital ships pop out, as well as a few hammerheads, a few fighters. Every single Xeno Threat member must be dealt with. But luckily, you have a help from the accompanying Navy forces at Jericho, Jericho itself with its powerful turrets, and that javelin that you worked so very hard to restock. However, all of these things, including the javelin, can be destroyed, and are also randomly allocated to players, which means that sometimes Navy forces are smaller, sometimes you might not even get a cool javelin. I will note, though, that this randomness could have just been a bug. Following their destruction, the following 2 comlinks are sent out.
Attention residents of the Stanton system. This is Special Agent in Charge Dooley of the Advocacy. I'm happy to report that our latest intel indicates that the last members of the outlaw pack known as Xeno Threat have withdrawn to the Pyro system. We are officially disbanding the Civilian Defense Force, but want to thank them for their tireless efforts to keep this system safe. Thank you.
People of Stanton, congratulations. The fact that you would eagerly kill your brothers and sisters to protect the pockets of corrupt officials has only proven how deep the sickness of greed has infected humanity. But know that this spark of revolution will not be so easily snuffed. Right now, there are those around the Empire who saw our daring stand against Xeno tyranny and have been inspired. Though they may not say it, they understand. In time, that spark will grow again into the flames of purification that will cleanse the cancer from our Empire and make it safe for humans once more. Know that Xeno Threat will be here to carry the torch and fan that flame. What you have seen as a fraction of Xeno Threat's might, know that we will not be deterred, but we will return.
That's all 3 phases. However, you may notice a few things missing, or at the very least, a bit emptier. The files seem to hint at a bunch of stuff cut from the missions, such as a lot of the dialogue in these missions were supposed to have pre-rendered comms. From the 4 available, there are probably more like 20. Or a system where Xeno Threat took over a planetary zone for a bit, with duly warning any incoming that it's being taken over. A lot of this stuff has seemingly either been cut long ago, with hints of their existence not yet snuffed out, or cut the last minute to ensure an end-of-year push. Xeno Threat, after all, was meant to be hinted at all of last year, with hints of its existence stemming from advertising at last CitizenCon to those initial radio broadcasts that were being seen in-game around the same time. If you look back to how the last year has gone, they only really talked about it towards the last quarter, with Chris Roberts first hinting about it in his letter, alongside the Expo having radio broadcasts be once again shown in-game, similar to Olisar far earlier in the year. Hopefully, CIG lets a bit of insight into how this event was developed. And that's Xeno Threat for you. Or at least, that's all for 3.12.1. Xeno Threat is seeming like it's going to become a recurring force in Stanton, with a few other test missions left in for a few FPS encounters. For dynamic events, the next one is seemingly called the Ninetales Lockdown, where a roaming fleet of Ninetales must be hunted throughout Stanton and will lock down certain areas. More on that as it comes by. For what I've been hearing from Evocati members, Xeno Threat, as of today, is sounding better and better, but don't worry folks. It still has that Star Citizen charm we all know and love. That's going to do it for today's return to the Drips and Drops format. Hopefully I could do these far more often as the year moves on by. Leave a like if you like these, leave a dislike if you don't, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. This has been Hater115. See ya later, gamers. As is custom for our videos, thank you to our Patreons for making videos like these possible. You allow us to get better equipment that improves our content, as well as gives us the motivation to go the extra mile. I'd like to give a special thanks, as is always, to our $10 tier, who I will start reading by name now. Brain, David William, Sam Zimmerman, Snarky.live, Faydog74, Unctum, Henry V, Archie, Dirk Mervis, Capt Despawn, Reccom, Josh Alman, Yannick Kjomili, Boobbot, Fox Nix, Gung Yu, Sorston, Kenny G. Sullivan, Professor Mango, and Brain. Thank you to everyone who continues to Patreon. Have a good day.